It was Christmas Eve, the snow falling softly outside, twinkling lights reflecting hope and joy, but inside our quiet neighborhood, fear was about to crash through the holiday cheer. My daughter, just 16, was walking home from her friend's house, excited to show off the little gift she had wrapped herself. Then it happened. An HOA board member, a woman everyone called Karen because of her temper and control freak nature, suddenly appeared out of nowhere. And before I could even process what was happening, she pulled a gun on my daughter. My heart stopped. Every parent's worst nightmare, frozen in time, helpless, terrified. But here's the twist no one could see coming. She didn't know that her own husband was the sheriff of our town, a man with eyes that missed nothing and a reputation that commanded respect. Do me a favor, before we dive into this unbelievable story, tell me, which city are you watching this from? Comment your city below. And don't forget, subscribe now so you don't miss this shocking, true story as it unfolds. Before we dive into the full story, I need you to imagine something. It's Christmas Eve. Your home is filled with warmth, laughter, and the smell of cinnamon and pine. You think your biggest concern is wrapping presents or making sure the lights are untangled. But in one instant, everything can turn upside down. That's exactly what happened to my family. I still remember the phone call, the way my heart sank when I heard my daughter's trembling voice on the other end. She had never sounded so scared, so small, as if the world itself had disappeared around her. And to think all of this started because of one overzealous HOA member, someone who thought she had the right to control every corner of our neighborhood. But this isn't just a story about a scary confrontation. It's about the shocking twists that followed, the secrets that came to light, and the unimaginable consequences when authority, pride, and fear collide. Every second mattered. Every decision could have changed everything. And just when we thought it couldn't get any worse, it did. Now, before I take you through the moment-by-moment nightmare, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment right now and tell me, what city are you watching this from? I'd love to see where all of you are joining from as we unravel this story together. And make sure you hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss a single shocking detail of what happened next, because every twist, every revelation, every heartbeat of the story will leave you speechless. Christmas Eve had always been my favorite time of the year. The streets of our neighborhood shimmered under layers of freshly fallen snow, and every house seemed to compete to see who could hang the brightest, most festive lights. My daughter, Lily, was 16, full of life, laughter, and the kind of innocence that makes every parent want to protect them from the world. That night, she had stayed at her friend's house for a small gift exchange, and I had promised her she could walk home after dark. Little did I know, this decision would haunt me forever. I had just finished hanging the last ornament on our tree, sipping hot cocoa, when my phone buzzed. Lily's name flashed on the screen, but the tone in her voice when I answered was unlike anything I had ever heard before. Her words were rushed, broken, and trembling. "Mom, someone's here. She has a gun. I don't know what to do." My heart stopped. The cocoa I had been sipping froze halfway in my mouth. I could barely process what she was saying. Lily slowed down. "Who has a gun?" I demanded, panic clawing its way up my throat. "Karen, the HOA lady," she stammered. She pulled it out. "I don't know why. Please, Mom, come." Her voice cracked, and suddenly every parent's nightmare became my reality. Karen had always been a thorn in the side of our neighborhood. Overzealous, controlling, always making mountains out of molehills. She had a reputation for showing up uninvited, criticizing everyone's holiday decorations, and enforcing rules nobody else cared about. But pulling a gun on a teenager? That was beyond comprehension. Without thinking, I grabbed my coat and ran out the door. Snow crunched beneath my boots as adrenaline surged through me, every second stretching like hours. My mind raced. Was Lily hurt? Did Karen actually mean to shoot her? And how had this escalated so quickly? I reached the end of the street and saw her, Lily, frozen in the glow of a street lamp, tears streaming down her cheeks, and Karen, standing only a few feet away, brandishing a gun like it was the most natural thing in the world. My stomach turned. Before I could shout, Karen spun toward me, surprise and anger contorting her face. "What are you doing here?" she barked, her voice shaking slightly, but the gun never wavered. My instinct screamed at me, "Do not make a wrong move." And then, out of nowhere, the twist no one expected. A car pulled up and the driver stepped out. It was him, her husband, the town sheriff. Calm, authoritative, ice cold, and calculating. Karen had no idea that the person who could control the situation completely was standing right behind her. The air was electric. Every heartbeat echoed like a drum. Every second stretched infinitely. I could see the tension in Lily's small frame, the gun trembling in Karen's hand, and the sheriff's quiet, steady presence that promised justice, or worse, retribution. This was the moment when our quiet, perfect neighborhood shattered, when Christmas joy collided violently with fear, and when every hidden truth began to surface. I didn't know it yet, but this night would change everything. As I approached cautiously, the sheriff's voice cut through the freezing air. "Karen, put the gun down." His tone was calm but carried the weight of authority that made even hardened criminals pause. For a split second, I thought she might comply, but then she shook her head, wild-eyed. I can't. They don't follow the rules," she shouted, waving the gun toward my daughter like a twisted protector of her own warped sense of order. My chest tightened. I could feel Lily trembling beside me. I wanted to run forward, to grab her, to scream, to protect her. But the presence of the sheriff gave me a sliver of hope. One wrong move could ignite a disaster no one could survive. Time seemed to freeze. The world narrowed down to 3 people. My terrified daughter, the woman holding a gun, and the man who could stop everything. Every instinct screamed at me, "This is bigger than just a neighborhood dispute. This is a storm about to explode, and there's no turning back now." I whispered to Lily, trying to calm her. "Stay calm. Don't make any sudden moves. Just breathe," she nodded, tears falling like silent rain, her small hands gripping mine. Every second that ticked by was agony. And then, just when it seemed like the situation might spiral completely out of control, Karen's hand shook. Her eyes darted toward her husband. For the first time, uncertainty crept in. The power dynamic shifted in a heartbeat. I didn't know what would happen next. Would Karen surrender? Would the sheriff have to take drastic action? Or would this night become the nightmare every parent fears? One thing was certain, nothing would ever be the same again. The cold night air bit through my coat as adrenaline coursed through my veins. I kept my hands visible, every muscle taut, every nerve screaming at me to move carefully. Karen's gun wavered in her grip, her knuckles white, and my daughter's tiny frame was frozen, trapped between fear and shock. It was a surreal tableau, one that could have been ripped from a nightmare. The sheriff, her husband, took a slow, deliberate step forward. His eyes, sharp and unwavering, never left Karen's face. "Karen," he said, his voice steady measured, "this ends tonight. Put the gun down. No one needs to get hurt." Karen's lips trembled. Her chest heaved. I could see the storm of emotions inside her. Anger, fear, pride, and something darker, something unspoken. Her eyes flicked to her husband, then to Lily, then back. They don't listen. They break the rules," she stammered. "What rules?" the sheriff demanded, his voice now tinged with warning. "You're pointing a gun at a child. Explain yourself." Karen's head shook violently. "You don't understand. I have to protect the neighborhood." Her voice cracked. It was part hysteria, part delusion. The cold logic that usually governed a person's actions had completely dissolved, replaced by a dangerous, irrational sense of mission. I could feel Lily trembling beside me. I whispered softly, "It's okay, honey, just breathe," but even my calm voice barely penetrated the chaos. My heart ached watching her try to make sense of the situation, the disbelief in her wide, tear-streaked eyes. The sheriff took another step, his stance firm but non-threatening. "Karen, you're scared, I get that. But hurting someone isn't protecting anyone. Hand over the gun. Now." For a moment, it seemed like she might comply. Her arms wavered, the gun dipping slightly. My breath caught. Relief surged in me, only to be replaced by horror moments later. Karen's lips curled into a wild, defiant snarl. I won't. No one tells me what to do. Not you, not anyone. Then the unimaginable happened. She fired. A deafening bang ripped through the night, echoing off the snow-covered houses. My ears rang and my stomach dropped, but by some miracle, or perhaps the skill of a trained officer, the bullet went wide, embedding itself harmlessly in a nearby tree. Lily screamed, backing into me, her tiny body trembling uncontrollably. I held her tight, whispering reassurances I didn't fully believe. It's okay, she can't hurt us now. The sheriff acted instantly. In a blur of motion, he disarmed Karen, twisting her wrist and forcing the gun from her grip with professional precision. She struggled, shouting, thrashing, but he held firm. The power dynamic had shifted completely in seconds. Karen's confidence crumbled as she realized that her reckless actions had just put her life and our lives on the line. Once the gun was safely secured, the sheriff turned to me and Lily. "You're safe now," he said, his tone firm but reassuring. "No one else is going to get hurt." My knees felt weak. Relief collided with lingering fear. I held Lily tighter, feeling the warmth of her small body against mine, silently promising her that nothing like this would ever happen again. But the night wasn't over. As Karen was led away, sobbing and mumbling about rules and justice, the sheriff revealed a truth that made my blood run cold. "She's not just unstable," he said quietly. "She's been hiding things. About our neighborhood, about herself. And you're going to want to hear all of it." I looked at him confused and wary. What could be worse than the terrifying, gun-wielding confrontation we had just endured? What secrets was he hinting at? The sense of relief I had felt seconds ago vanished, replaced by dread. Karen's breakdown had exposed a side of her no one had ever seen. Her obsession with control, her willingness to escalate to violence, and now the hints of hidden motives. Everything painted a picture far more dangerous than any neighborly squabble. The sheriff guided us to the car. "You need to be somewhere safe," he said. "I want to explain everything." I nodded, still holding Lily, my mind racing. Every step we took, every word spoken, seemed to pull us deeper into a web of secrets, fear, and unthinkable possibilities. As we drove through the quiet, snow-covered streets, I couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. One wrong move could have destroyed my family. 1 second's hesitation, one missed glance, and the night could have ended in tragedy. And yet, despite the terror, despite the uncertainty, a strange realization settled over me. The sheriff had control now, and perhaps, just perhaps, there was hope. But even as I clung to that hope, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The night's events were the tip of an iceberg, a prelude to something far more dangerous and shocking than a single gun-wielding HOA member. The sheriff finally spoke, breaking the silence. "There's more you need to know about Karen. About the things she's been planning. About the threats no one saw coming. And it all connects to why she acted tonight. If you think this was just an isolated incident, you're wrong. This is bigger." I swallowed hard, gripping Lily's hand. My mind raced with questions. Bigger? How could it be bigger? What had we stumbled into? And most importantly, what did this mean for my daughter, for our family, and for the quiet neighborhood we thought was safe? The night had started with joy and anticipation, a simple walk home from a friend's house, a quiet Christmas Eve. But now, fear had taken center stage, and every shadow seemed to hide danger. As I looked out the car window at the snow swirling in the streetlights, I realized that the story we thought had ended with a gun being pulled had only just begun. After the terrifying confrontation, I thought the worst was behind us. My mind kept replaying the image of Lily frozen under the street lamp, the gun in Karen's trembling hands, and the cold authority of the sheriff stepping in just in time. But as we drove through the quiet, snow-blanketed streets, the sheriff's words lingered like a shadow. "This is bigger than tonight, bigger than Karen." I gripped Lily's hand, silently willing myself to stay calm. Her small fingers were icy, her eyes wide and alert. "Mom, what's going on?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I had no answer yet, only fear and uncertainty. The sheriff parked in front of a modest, well-lit house at the edge of town. "You're safe here for now," he said, "but I need you to hear everything." He gestured inside, and I ushered Lily into the warmth, feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. Every instinct screamed that nothing about this night was ordinary. As we sat down, the sheriff began to speak. "Karen hasn't just been overstepping her authority. She's been planning, scheming, manipulating the neighborhood for months, maybe years. But no one knew the extent until tonight." I stared at him, disbelief mixed with horror. Planning what? What could she possibly be planning that makes her pull a gun on a child? His expression hardened. Control, power, fear. Karen thrives on it. She's been keeping tabs on families, exploiting fears, finding weaknesses. She wanted the neighborhood to obey her without question. But there's more. She's been hiding things she thought would never be discovered. My heart pounded. What kind of person escalates this far? And why target Lily? The sheriff leaned closer. Karen has been blackmailing people, quietly behind the scenes. Threats, intimidation, small at first, then bigger. She was building leverage over anyone she considered a threat or nuisance. And tonight, she saw your daughter walking home as an opportunity to assert her power, to show she wasn't afraid of consequences. I couldn't breathe. My mind raced through the possibilities. But why my daughter? I asked, voice barely audible. "Because she thought you wouldn't fight back," the sheriff said grimly. "She underestimated me, too, her own husband. That's what saved her life tonight. And yours." I swallowed hard, trying to process every neighborly dispute, every petty complaint Karen had ever made, now seemed like part of a larger, more sinister pattern. The woman everyone had laughed off or ignored was far more dangerous than anyone suspected. Then the sheriff dropped a revelation that made my blood run cold. Karen isn't just dangerous. She's been planning something for tonight, something specific. She was expecting a confrontation, but she didn't anticipate that I would intervene. Had I not been here, you wouldn't be sitting in this house right now. I felt a chill run down my spine. The thought of what could have happened if he hadn't arrived in time was unbearable. I looked at Lily, curled against me, shivering from fear and adrenaline. This night had been a lesson in how fragile safety really is. "And there's another layer," the sheriff continued, his voice low, almost somber. "Karen has connections. People you would never suspect. People who have quietly enabled her behavior. If she felt threatened, she could escalate again, faster, smarter, more dangerously." I sat frozen. Every horror story, every neighbor dispute, every small rule she'd enforced seemed trivial compared to what the sheriff was now revealing. The woman who once nagged about decorations and parking spaces was capable of something far darker. Lily squeezed my hand. "Mom, will she come back?" Her voice broke my heart. The fear in her eyes was something no parent should ever see. I hugged her tightly, whispering reassurances I didn't fully believe. "No, not while he's here. You're safe now." But even as I said the words, I knew the night had changed us forever. The sheriff had saved us physically, but the emotional scars would linger. The sheriff pulled out a folder. Inside were documents, notes, even photographs, evidence of Karen's surveillance, her threats, and her manipulations. "Look at this," he said. "Every complaint she filed, every violation she claimed, every argument she escalated, it was part of a strategy. She wanted control. And tonight, she almost lost it. Or worse, she almost took a life in the process." I flipped through the pages, my stomach turning. The meticulous records, the obsession, the planning, it was terrifying. A woman who seemed like just another overbearing neighbor was actually a calculated threat. My mind raced. How had we all been blind to this? How had this gone unnoticed until it nearly ended in tragedy? Then the sheriff paused, looking me in the eyes. "This isn't just about tonight, or even about Karen. This is about understanding the patterns, the motivations, and the people enabling her. Because if you think this ends here, it doesn't. She's clever, dangerous, and unpredictable. And the fact that she pulled a gun on a child, that's only the beginning of what she's capable of when cornered. Fear and disbelief churned in me. I had thought our neighborhood was safe, that the worst we might face was petty complaints or arguments about holiday decorations. But the truth was far darker. Karen wasn't just a problem. We were lucky she didn't cross a line that night that couldn't be undone. And then, just when I thought I understood the gravity of the situation, the sheriff delivered the twist that made my jaw drop. She didn't know I was nearby. Not just nearby, but prepared. Had she known, tonight could have been far worse. That's why she's in custody now, but the implications, they're bigger than you think. I stared at him, horrified and mesmerized. Every detail he revealed made me realize that what we had experienced wasn't random. It was part of a carefully orchestrated pattern, and the fact that my daughter was almost caught in the middle made it personal. Lily leaned against me, exhausted, scared, but alive. I held her close, silently promising that we would survive this. But the sheriff's words lingered, a chilling reminder that danger doesn't always announce itself. It waits, it observes, and it strikes when least expected. The night had started with snowflakes and Christmas lights, with joy and laughter. It ended with revelations, fear, and a sobering understanding that safety is fragile, and that sometimes the people you trust, or the ones you think you know, can hide secrets capable of destroying everything. And as I sat there, holding my daughter, I realized that this story, this nightmare, was far from over. The night's events had exposed something bigger, something darker, something that would change our lives, and the neighborhood forever. The warmth of the house did little to calm the storm inside my mind. I kept glancing at Lily, curled up beside me, still trembling from the fear and adrenaline. Her eyes were wide, as if she couldn't quite comprehend what had just happened. And truthfully, neither could I. A gun, a confrontation, the sheriff's calm authority. It all felt like a scene from a thriller, not our quiet suburban street. The sheriff sat across from me, his face serious, his tone deliberate. "You need to understand," he began, "Karen isn't acting alone. She has been in communication with people who share her obsession with control, people who believe rules and fear are the only way to maintain order. And tonight, she tried to escalate because she thought her plans were ready to succeed." My stomach twisted. "Plans? What plans? What are you talking about?" He leaned forward, his eyes locking with mine. "There have been threats in our town. Subtle at first, dismissed as coincidences, nothing more than misunderstandings. Karen took advantage of that. She's been watching, gathering information, testing limits. And tonight, she targeted your daughter because she knew it would provoke a reaction, a chain that could spiral out of control." I shivered. Every detail the sheriff shared made me realize how little we truly knew about the people around us. The neighbors we waved to, the people we trusted. Karen had been using them as pawns in a game none of us knew existed. Then the sheriff pulled out his phone and showed me messages, emails, even recordings, proof of Karen's secret network. There were threats aimed at families, plans to intimidate residents who didn't comply with her rules, and even mentions of events scheduled in the coming weeks that made my blood run cold. "She's been planning something big," he said quietly, almost himself. Something she thought no one could stop. I felt a lump in my throat. Could she really have escalated further? Could this have become more than a terrifying incident with a gun? I glanced at Lily, who had buried her face in my shoulder, and my heart ached. We had narrowly escaped a nightmare, but the danger wasn't over. The sheriff's next words made me freeze. "Karen didn't know I was watching tonight. But her network, those she trusts, will know. And they may try to act. That's why I want you and your daughter somewhere safe, away from the neighborhood for now." I nodded, swallowing hard. Every instinct screamed to run, to flee, to protect my child at all costs. Yet the thought of leaving our home, the place that had always been our sanctuary, was terrifying in its own way. What if Karen's reach was longer than we thought? What if she had eyes everywhere? As if sensing my thoughts, the sheriff added, "She's unpredictable. The people she communicates with are unpredictable. That's why tonight could have ended in tragedy, and why it's not over yet. You've seen the tip of the iceberg." My mind replayed every moment. Karen pointing the gun, Lily frozen in fear, the sheriff stepping in at the perfect second. Each memory was a razor-sharp reminder of how fragile life can be, how quickly safety can vanish. And then the sheriff dropped the most shocking revelation yet. You need to know something about Karen's husband, myself. She's always been manipulative, but she has no idea of my reach, my access, my ability to protect those she targets. I've been tracking her for weeks, gathering evidence, anticipating escalation. Tonight was supposed to be the moment she realized she couldn't act with impunity, but she didn't expect me to be home, and she didn't expect me to act so decisively. I stared at him, my pulse racing. The man sitting across from me, calm, composed, authoritative, was not just a protector. He was a strategist, someone who had foreseen this chaos and acted precisely to prevent it. My gratitude was immense, but it was tinged with a growing sense of dread. Tonight wasn't random, he continued. Every move she made was calculated. Every threat, every intimidation, every complaint, it was all part of a pattern designed to assert control and fear. But now she knows I'm a threat, and that changes everything. Karen is dangerous, yes, but the people she trusts are equally dangerous, and they might act. I shivered again. The idea that this wasn't just about Karen, but a network of people operating in shadows made my mind race. How many of our neighbors were part of this? How many had been manipulated, coerced, or threatened? And most importantly, what would they do next? Lily stirred, looking up at me with wide, frightened eyes. "Mom, is she going to come back?" she whispered. Her innocence, so fragile and precious, tore at my heart. I hugged her tight, whispering words of reassurance. "No, baby, you're safe. I promise." But deep down, I wasn't sure if I could keep that promise. The sheriff's revelations made it clear this wasn't over. It was only the beginning. The night dragged on, tension thick in the air. Every sound outside the house, creaking branches, distant car engines, the hum of streetlights, felt like a potential threat. The fear was suffocating, yet the sheriff remained calm, explaining plans to secure our safety, monitoring communications, and preparing for any possible escalation. And then came the twist I never expected. A message from one of Karen's contacts, intercepted by the sheriff. It was cryptic yet menacing. "She won't fail this time. The plan is set. The neighborhood will comply, or there will be consequences." My blood ran cold. This was no longer just about a gun, a confrontation, or a single unstable neighbor. This was a carefully orchestrated plan, a network of manipulation and intimidation, and somehow my family had been caught in the center. The sheriff looked at me gravely. "This isn't about retaliation. It's about strategy. We need to anticipate her moves, protect your family, and prevent anyone from getting hurt. And that means you may have to trust me completely, even with things you don't understand yet." I nodded, overwhelmed but knowing I had no choice. Our survival, our safety, and Lily's life depended on it. The snow outside continued to fall, quiet and serene, a stark contrast to the storm of danger and secrets that had enveloped us. For the first time, I realized just how fragile the illusion of safety in our neighborhood had been. The woman we had laughed at, ignored, or dismissed, Karen, was far more dangerous than anyone imagined, and her network, her secrets, and her plans were only beginning to surface. The night had started as a simple walk home, a joyful evening filled with Christmas cheer. But now, as I sat with the sheriff, the full weight of the danger we had narrowly escaped settled on me. This wasn't over. The web of threats, secrets, and manipulations was vast, and we had only just begun to unravel it. And as the first hints of dawn began to break over the snow-covered streets, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, we had to be ready, because Karen's reach, and the reach of those who supported her, was far longer than anyone could imagine. The night had dragged on, and yet the tension never seemed to ease. Every creak in the floorboards, every whisper of wind against the windows, felt like a potential threat. Lily clung to me, exhausted yet unable to sleep, her mind still haunted by the memory of Karen's gun. I held her tight, silently promising that she would be safe. But the sheriff's earlier words kept echoing in my mind. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. The sheriff sat across from us, leaning forward, his voice calm but carrying a weight that made my stomach tighten. There's more you need to know about Karen, he began. About her past, her motivations, and why tonight almost ended in tragedy. Understanding that is key to understanding the danger we're in. I nodded, gripping Lily's hand. My pulse raced. Every revelation so far had been more shocking than the last. I had no idea how much worse this could get. Karen didn't start like this, the sheriff explained. She was a model neighbor for years, or at least that's what she wanted people to believe. She was charming, persuasive, and incredibly intelligent. But behind that smile, she harbored resentment, a need for control that grew over time. He pulled out more documents and photographs, showing a timeline of incidents that I hadn't noticed, or perhaps hadn't dared to see. Complaints filed against neighbors, subtle manipulations, secret alliances, and then a horrifying escalation. Her obsession with control isn't new, he said quietly. It's been building for over a decade. And it's always been about asserting dominance over people she thinks are weaker or can be intimidated. I swallowed hard. Each image, each note, each message revealed a side of Karen I never imagined. The woman who had once nagged about lawn decorations and holiday lights was actually a master manipulator, someone who thrived on fear and compliance. And now, that obsession had turned deadly. The sheriff paused, taking a deep breath. Tonight was a tipping point. Her network, people she's been communicating with in secret, was ready to escalate. They trusted her judgment, her methods, and her vision for control. The problem is, they didn't expect me to intervene, or that she'd underestimate my presence. My mind reeled. A network? Threats? Hidden plans? This was far more than a neighborhood dispute. My pulse quickened, and I could feel Lily trembling against me. I whispered, "Mom's here. You're safe. I promise." But even as I spoke, I knew that was only partially true. Karen's influence, her network, and the people she trusted extended beyond our immediate neighborhood. And if they were willing to act, the danger was far from over. The sheriff continued, his eyes serious. "There's another reason she targeted your daughter. Lily is innocent, yes, but she also represents a trigger. Karen believed that by threatening someone you care about, she could manipulate you, control your reactions, and test boundaries. It's psychological. She's been doing this for years, building strategies, learning how far people will go when pushed. I couldn't breathe. The idea that Lily was chosen as part of some twisted psychological strategy made my blood run cold. Every parent's worst nightmare had been weaponized by someone with a dangerous mind and a network to back her up. And there's one more thing, the sheriff said, lowering his voice. Karen has a history you need to know. Before moving here, she was involved in several communities where similar patterns emerge, complaints, intimidation, even threats. People dismissed it at first. They thought she was just overbearing. But the pattern was always the same. Escalate slowly, observe reactions, then test limits. And when she's cornered, she acts. I felt a chill run down my spine. The woman who had terrorized my daughter wasn't just local. She had a history of manipulative, dangerous behavior, and it had only escalated over time. Lily whispered, "Mom, why would someone be like that?" My heart ached. How do you explain true evil to a child? I kissed the top of her head and said, "Some people are lost, baby, but we're going to make sure she can't hurt anyone else." The sheriff nodded. Exactly. And that's why tonight's intervention was critical. But it also exposed something else. Her network knows she's been stopped. That could provoke a response. They may try to act in her place. That's why we have to be vigilant. My mind spun. The danger wasn't over. Karen was in custody, yes, but her reach, the reach of the people who supported her, was still out there, watching, waiting, planning. Every shadow, every creak of the wind, felt like it could be the start of something new. Then, the sheriff revealed the twist that made my blood run cold. I intercepted messages tonight, right before the confrontation. They show that Karen had planned a larger event, a coordinated effort to intimidate families in the neighborhood, and she specifically chose tonight, Christmas Eve, because she thought people would be distracted, vulnerable. She thought she could act with impunity. I stared at him horrified. The fact that Lily's walk home had intersected with a larger, premeditated plan made the night even more terrifying. This wasn't random. This was strategy, and my family had almost become the first victims. The sheriff's next words were almost a whisper, yet they carried the weight of the entire situation. The network she's part of, they're organized. They communicate in codes, they cover their tracks, and they escalate when cornered. Tonight could have been a small taste of what they're capable of. I felt my knees weaken. I hugged Lily tighter, praying silently that we would survive what was coming next. The snow outside continued to fall, blanketing the neighborhood in serene white, a stark contrast to the chaos and danger that had infiltrated our lives. "And that's why you have to trust me completely," the sheriff said. "Every decision I make from now on will be about protecting you and Lily. Nothing is too small, no detail is irrelevant, and no one should be underestimated, including Karen's network." I nodded, though fear gnawed at me. I realized in that moment that our lives had changed forever. Christmas Eve, a night that should have been filled with joy, laughter, and peace, had turned into a nightmare. But it also revealed something crucial. Preparation, vigilance, and trust in the right person could save lives. Lily's small hand gripped mine. "Mom, are we really safe?" Her voice was barely a whisper, but it was full of the kind of fear that leaves scars. I kissed her forehead, trying to muster reassurance. "Yes, baby. We're safe now. But we have to be smart. We have to be careful." The sheriff looked at me with intensity. "This is only the beginning. Karen's reach, her network, her history, it's bigger than any of us imagined. But tonight you survived, and understanding the past is key to surviving what comes next." I felt a mix of relief, fear, and determination. The confrontation tonight had been terrifying, but it had also exposed the truth. Karen wasn't just a threat. She was part of a network, a dangerous system, a psychological and strategic force that had been underestimated for far too long. And as the night dragged on, the shadows of her past and the looming presence of her network made one thing painfully clear. The next move, the next confrontation, could happen at any moment, and we had to be ready. The morning after the Christmas Eve nightmare was eerily quiet. Snow still blanketed the neighborhood, sparkling under the weak light of dawn, but the air was heavy with tension. Lily clung to me, exhausted but restless, her small hands gripping mine as though I were her anchor in a world suddenly full of danger. My heart was still pounding from the events of the night before, from the image of Karen pointing a gun at my daughter, from the chilling realization that we were dealing with a network of people more dangerous than I could have imagined. The sheriff stood by the window, scanning the quiet streets with sharp, watchful eyes. He turned to me, his expression serious. "Karen's network won't wait long. She may be in custody, but her associates, people who believe in her mission, who trust her instincts, are still out there. They might try to act today." I swallowed hard, fear twisting in my stomach. "How do we stop them?" I asked, my voice trembling. The sheriff's jaw tightened. "We anticipate, we prepare, and we strike first if necessary. Tonight, you saw what happens when someone underestimates her. But today, we take control. We end this." For the next few hours, we fortified the house, securing entrances, setting up safe zones, and making sure Lily had a place to hide if needed. Every sound, the creak of the floorboards, the rustle of the wind, felt amplified. Time moved agonizingly slowly, every minute stretching into hours. I kept replaying the gun confrontation in my mind. Karen's wild eyes, the shaking gun, the way the sheriff had moved with calm precision. My daughter's face, frozen in fear, haunted me. Then, around mid-afternoon, the first sign of movement appeared. A black SUV pulled up near the edge of the street, suspiciously out of place among the holiday-decorated homes. The sheriff tensed. "They've arrived," he said quietly. "Karen's people. They've come to see if her plan continues without her. I felt my pulse spike. The threat was immediate. Every parent's worst nightmare was unfolding in real time before my eyes. The sheriff moved strategically, guiding us to a safe room at the back of the house. Lily's small body pressed against mine as he whispered instructions on how to stay hidden, how to remain silent, and what to do if the intruders entered. Then the first confrontation began. A team of masked individuals approached the house, clearly trained, clearly dangerous. The sheriff's calm authority didn't waver, but the tension in the room was palpable. We were sitting in the shadows, waiting for the moment that could determine our survival. Suddenly, the front door rattled violently. "Open up!" A voice shouted, distorted through mask. My heart stopped. Each second stretched like an eternity. The sheriff held a hand up, signaling us to stay quiet, and moved to intercept. What happened next was a blur. In a calculated, almost cinematic sequence, the sheriff neutralized the first two intruders with non-lethal precision, disarming them before they could react. I could barely believe my eyes. The man who had protected us all night was a force to be reckoned with. But then the real shock came. One of the intruders, masked and armed, reached for the gun. The sheriff hesitated, only for a split second before moving in, but in that instant, the figure removed the mask. My heart froze. It was Karen herself. She had managed to escape custody during the night, aided by someone from her network. My daughter's face flashed before my eyes, and a surge of protective instinct overtook fear. Karen's eyes met mine, wide and wild, a twisted mix of rage and desperation. "You think you can stop me?" she shouted. "You don't understand. This neighborhood belongs to me." The sheriff stepped forward, calm and commanding. "Karen, it's over. You can surrender now or face the consequences. You cannot manipulate anyone else. Not today. Not ever." Her laugh was bitter, unhinged, echoing in the quiet house. "Consequences? You think you can stop what's already in motion?" It was then I realized the depth of her obsession, how carefully she had orchestrated every detail, how deeply she had underestimated the sheriff's vigilance, and how dangerous she was when cornered. She lunged toward us with a gun raised, but the sheriff reacted instantly, a calculated movement that disarmed her before she could fire. She fell to the ground, furious, screaming, struggling to comprehend how her plan had failed. The other members of her network, caught off guard, leaderless, were quickly neutralized by the sheriff's team who had been strategically placed around the perimeter. Within minutes, the threat was contained. I sank to the floor, holding Lily, my body shaking with relief and exhaustion. The danger had passed, but the emotional toll was immense. My daughter had survived, but the memory of fear, of the gun pointed at her, would remain with her forever. The sheriff turned to me, his face resolute. "It's over now. Karen's in custody, the network is neutralized, and you and your daughter are safe. But remember this, preparedness and vigilance are what saved your lives tonight. Never underestimate danger." I nodded, tears streaming down my face. The ordeal had revealed not only the fragility of safety, but also the resilience of the human spirit and the importance of courage in the face of terror. Lily whispered, her voice trembling, "Mom, is it really over?" I hugged her tightly. "Yes, baby. It's over. We're safe now." But even as relief washed over us, I realized that life would never be the same. Christmas Eve, a night of joy and celebration, had turned into a crucible of fear, revelation, and survival. We had been tested in ways no family should ever face, and yet we had endured. The sheriff, preparing to leave, offered a final piece of advice. Keep your loved ones close, trust your instincts, and never ignore the warning signs of danger. Karen was extreme. Yes, but the lesson is universal. Vigilance saves lives. As he walked away, I looked at Lily, my heart overflowing with love and gratitude. "We survived," I whispered. "We really survived." The night that had begun with snowflakes and Christmas lights ended with a hard-earned victory, a restored sense of safety, and the knowledge that courage, preparation, and trust in the right people can overcome even the darkest threats. And for anyone watching this story unfold, remember, life is precious, danger can appear when you least expect it, and protecting those you love is the most important battle you will ever face. If you've been moved, shocked, or inspired by this story, don't just watch, take action. Comment below with your city, share the story to raise awareness, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another unbelievable life-changing tale. Your vigilance could save lives, maybe even your own. If the story shocked you, left your heart racing, or made you realize just how fragile safety can be, don't let it stop here. Comment below right now and tell me, what city are you watching from? I want to know where all of you are joining from as we share this experience together. Share this story with your friends and family, because awareness saves lives. You never know when vigilance and preparedness can protect the ones you love most. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Don't miss a single true story that will shock, inspire, and remind you why courage and awareness are so powerful. Remember, danger can strike when you least expect it. But with knowledge, action, and alertness, you can survive anything. Make sure you and your loved ones are ready. Share, comment, and subscribe. And join us in uncovering the shocking truth, one story at a time.